So, as usual, a brief introduction on Sigma, which is a joint initiative of the OECD and the European Union, and it's mainly financed by the European Union. As you know, we are organizing this series of webinars on the new Global Internal Audit Standards in the framework of our support activities in the field of internal audit to candidate countries, potential candidates, and neighbor countries to the European Union. This webinar will focus on domain 4, which comprises the principles and standards for managing the internal audit function. So this domain, you will see that it refers to the need to have appropriate arrangements for managing the internal audit function, which are essential for it to deliver effectively its audit and advisory services. So the domain outlines the requirements for an adequate management of the internal audit function, and it covers the responsibilities of heads of internal audit to plan strategically, to manage resources so that the strategy is implemented and the plan and mandate are achieved, to guide the internal audit function, to communicate effectively with all the stakeholders, and also to comply with the global internal audit standards and continuous performance improvements. So all those are responsibilities of the heads of internal audit, and John will be referring to them in his presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to John Chesshire, whom you know from previous webinars. So John, thanks. The floor is yours. And sorry, just one thing. As usual, if you have questions, you can either raise your hand and we will give you the floor, or you can also anytime ask your questions in the chat. So now, yes, John, thanks. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pilar, and good morning, everyone, wherever you are. I hope you had a good weekend, and the sun is shining where you are. For the first time in these webinars, I'm actually dialing in from home, which is unusual, as many of you will know. So home for me is Oxford in England. The sun is shining, which is also unusual. And it's at least an hour earlier than most of you. So I've only had one or two coffees, I think, so far. So forgive me if I sound a little tired. I'm still waking up, really. Anyway, I hope everyone is okay. And thank you very much for asking me to come and talk about Domain 4 today. One of the most interesting, exciting, relevant domains for many of us, because it's all about us as internal auditors and heads of internal audit. So this is sort of really where it gets exciting in the new Global Internal Audit Standards. We'll the same routine as previously. I'm going to talk a bit. Very happy, as Pilar said, to have questions as we go through. We'll leave a little bit of time at the end for questions as well. But I'm going to basically be working through the content of this domain, highlighting the bits that are interesting, particularly interesting, the bits that are a bit more challenging for us, and to share some of my thoughts about what we can begin to do to set things up within our team, to ensure that when January the 9th comes around next year, we're in a position of being able to conform with these new standards, or at least have an action plan in place with a clearer idea of what we need to do to conform with these. So me, 25 years doing audit, risk and governance roles. I've worked for different organisations in the UK. I now mainly work internationally with organisations like Sigma, with NATO, with the UK government, but also with the Chartered Institute of Internal Auditors here in the UK and other IIA chapters across Europe and across the world. So I'm very lucky. I get to travel a lot and meet lots of internal auditors in those journeys. So that's me. Again, I always start just with a brief recap. We've got our existing international professional practices framework, the one that you'll all be familiar with. We're still using this today, right through till, I suppose, the 8th of January next year, on the left-hand side there. And then we have the new Global Internal Audit Standards that form part of their IPPF again. Within the new IPPF, we've got the standards and we've got these topical requirements that cover particular hot topics, as the name suggests, in the world of internal audit and detail the sorts of things that we must include when we're reviewing or auditing those subjects. Maybe more about those in the future. We'll see how it goes. But for this series of webinars, we're talking about the standards themselves. We've covered off the sort of introduction to them and the purpose in our first session. And then we've gone through ethics and professionalism. Just a week or so ago, we looked at governing the internal audit function, domain 3. And as we've said, today it's domain 4. The structure, as we've said previously, 5 domains, 15 key principles. They sort of replace the core principles that we have currently, and 52 standards across these sort of 5 domains. And the standards are broken down into the things that we must do, things that we have no choice about doing if we want to conform with the standards, the requirements. And then considerations that are a little bit more optional, but strongly advised, but less, you know, um, less mandatory. So they use the word should when we're talking about considerations for implementation. We spoke a little bit last time about the difference between must and should. It's a very important set of differences. The requirements are mandatory, the considerations for implementation strongly advised. The IA helpfully give us some examples of the sorts of things that we could be doing to conform or to demonstrate our conformance or compliance with these standards. I think that's quite helpful. And just last week, someone separate to Sigma asked me a question, and they said, "Do we have to do each of the things in the evidence of conformance, able to show that we comply with these?" I said, "No, they're examples. We don't have to do these. There may be other ways of demonstrating what we're doing to comply with these standards, but they can be a help to us." So, it's certainly something to bear in mind if we're not sure what to do or how to do this. They give us some good inspiration. So do take a look at the examples at the end of each of these standards that tell us a little bit about what we could and should be doing. Now, domain 4 today, as Pilar said in her introduction, it's about 4 main areas. Strategic planning as internal audit, how we manage our resources, the importance of effective communication, and then the sort of first section really around quality, enhancing quality. We talked a little bit about quality last time when it comes to the external quality assessments. Today it's much more about what we need to do in internal audit to demonstrate the quality in our work. So 4 main areas. As Pilar said, we will also be sharing the slides with you, so don't think that you have to sit there writing lots of things down. Most of the content of the slides is taken from the standards themselves, but we will share these with you afterwards. Breaking domain 4 down a little bit more deeply, we have the 4 elements, and within each of the 4 sections, we have a number of standards. As usual, I'm going to spend my time talking more about the things that have changed, the things that are a little bit different, the new things, or the slightly more challenging things. I will spend less time on the areas that we're more familiar with or don't come up very often. So things like, we can see it in the third box here, the standard around errors and omissions. It's not often that we make such a big mistake in our report by the time we get to our final report that we then have to go back and say to everyone, we're sorry, we made a mistake, this is what we should have included. Now, it doesn't happen very often. So I'm not going to spend so much time talking about the not less important, less challenging of these standards. You can see that there's a different number of standards under each of these sections. So some have got sort of 3 associated standards, others have got more. So it doesn't mean that one area is more important than another. It's just that the number of associated standards will vary across these. So we're going to start at the beginning. So planning strategically, as Pilar said. Oh, before we do that, obviously, it's just a quick point about roles and responsibilities. The chief audit executive, the head of internal audit, whatever the term is for the person who is ultimately responsible for managing the internal audit service or the internal audit function, ultimately it's their role, according to the Institute, for managing the internal audit function in line with both the charter that we spoke about a couple of sessions ago and these standards. So it's ultimately their role. It's not anybody else's role. So that puts a kind of burden or an obligation on the head of audit to be thinking about these standards and to be going out and engaging with stakeholders to improve their awareness of internal audit and these standards, and to do the necessary things with our stakeholders that enable us to deliver an effective internal audit service. As it says here, that includes strategic planning, obtaining resources, developing and enhancing relationships, communications with our key stakeholders, and then the sort of quality assurance and quality improvement that's so important for any organisation and any team. Continuous improvement. That's not anybody else's role other than the head of audit. And they've got to be putting the time, effort, and energy into doing this well, rather than just saying, well, that's what it is. This is what I'm given. I can't do anything else. We've got to make our stakeholders aware of their obligations to support us in delivering an effective internal audit service. The final paragraph, something we touched upon last time actually, was about the reporting lines of the head of internal audit. Very, very important indeed. Without the right reporting lines, without the right position in the organisation, it's much more difficult to do our job properly, effectively, in line with the standards, and objectively and independently. So the standards are pretty clear, as you can see. The head of audit typically has an administrative reporting line to the highest ranking person in senior management. In the public sector, that may well be a politician, a minister, for argument's sake. Elsewhere, it may be the chief executive officer or some other very senior sort of C-suite leader. And that will help us undertake the day-to-day activity that we need to do. Okay, the resourcing, etc. It's not always easy though, and obviously we have this functional reporting line to audit committees, but we don't all have audit committees, and that's a slight additional challenge for us. Vanya, I see you've raised your hand. Can we give Vanya the permission to either speak or to something in the chat for us? Look, Vanya. Just trying to get access. There you go. Maybe if you could unmute yourself if you wanted to ask anything at this point. Look. Vanya, you've raised your hand. Did you want to ask anything?
Maybe not, but please
Maybe
feel
not.
free.
If
But
yeah, Sorry, Pilar.
Yeah, she can. You can also, Vania, if you want, you can use the chat if you prefer.
Yep, the chat is always available. So if there is something, please pop it in the chat. I'm going to carry on, but I'll keep my eyes peeled to see if anything comes in the chat log. Okay, let's start at the beginning. If you're sitting comfortably, let's get stuck into this. So we have our principle 9, as we see, planning strategically. This is going to be an area that will change for many of you. Okay, you may say to me, John, we've got an audit strategic plan, or we've got an audit strategy. And I know that many audit services have, and they're required to have some sort of 3-year, possibly 4-year strategic plan. So it's not the concept that is changed. Planning strategically, developing a strategy or a strategic plan has been a good idea for many, many years. I first wrote an audit strategy, I think, in 2010, when I started in my last organization. I was previously a deputy head of audit, and we had one in my last organization too before that. So these aren't new concepts, but I think what's changed, and we'll see it when we look at the standard in just a minute, is the nature of the strategic plan will have changed. So there will be some work for most of us in this area to ensure that any strategy or strategic plan we've got aligns with what the standards are expecting it to cover. So the principle behind strategic planning is sensible. We plan strategically to help ensure internal audit is in the right sort of state, the right place in the organization. Why? To enable us to deliver. We promise to deliver under our mandate, our purpose, authority, responsibilities, what we're accountable for. That mandate is documented in our charter, and I always think of our charter as a sort of handshake, an agreement, our contract with the organisation that says what we're going to do to help the organisation. There's responsibilities on us when we deliver, when we prepare and deliver charter. So to fulfil our mandate and to achieve long-term success. And, long-term success, it's about delivering the services that we need to deliver to the organisation efficiently, economically, and effectively. It's about looking at the right things, making a positive difference towards improving governance, risk, and control in the organisation. It's about delivering a range of value-adding assurance and advisory services. It's about developing our people so that we have the competence and the expertise to become the trusted advisors that perhaps we all want to be. So that's what we mean really by long-term success. Now the principle goes on. I'm not going to read it all out, but we can see here the Institute's line a properly resourced and positioned internal audit function develops and implements a strategy to support the organisation's success. And in addition to that, we create methodologies, our audit processes, ultimately, and our audit procedures to help us undertake our work effectively and to help us develop up a plan for the next period ahead, whether that's a year, 6 months, 3 months, whatever the nature of our planning is. Before we get on to standard 9.2 and strategy, we do have this overall standard that talks about us having to understand governance, risk management, and control processes within an organization. And it kind of makes sense that we've got to understand how these things work in our organization before we can develop up an effective strategy and plan. Because this governance, risk management, and internal control is working really well in an organization, if it's well established, if it's well embedded, if it's part of how we do things on a day-to-day basis, then our strategy and our planning the things that we are auditing will look very different compared to an organization where governance, risk management, where internal control is relatively new, relatively weak, and is on the initial steps of a journey. Our approach will be different there. So we've got to understand the context in which we're going to deliver our internal audit services. If you're new to an organization, you may remember sort of how you did that. You go out, you talk to a lot of people, you have a number of meetings, you hoover up, vacuum up documents to take a look at. You study the intranet and things that are posted there, all to get this good understanding of the organization so that you can begin to shape your thinking around internal audit and what your priorities are going to be to help, the organization further mature in these areas. Otherwise, we're like a doctor treating a patient, but without knowing what's wrong with the patient. We'll be giving them all sorts of medicine, but it might not be the right medicine that they need. And that's a waste of everybody's time, isn't it? So we've got to understand governance, risk management, and control within our organization. It changes over time. So we've got to make sure that we're staying up to date with developments and changes, of course. And the Institute give us some ideas here of the sorts of things we must consider. You'll see the word must there. How the organisation does its own strategic planning, set its priorities, its purpose, its vision, its strategic objectives, and what the decision-making processes are around that. Does everything get escalated to the very top of the organisation? Or do operational managers have the ability to make quite important decisions? How does it work? Who gets involved? What's the roles, responsibilities, the accountabilities, and the authorization levels in the organization? Who can decide what at the end of the day? What else is important here? How risk management and internal control operate. Is there a formal risk management framework in an organization? How do we embed that across a ministry or across some sort of other institution to ensure that that's working properly, that risks are being managed and controlled to give us some sort of confidence that the organization will achieve its objectives? How our organization talks about values, culture, behaviors, how it sets out for everybody what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. How does the organization encourage and make it easy for people to do the right thing each time, every time? So the whole sort of ethical emphasis in an organization. Performance management. Okay, so we've set some objectives. How does the organization then ensure these objectives are tracked and we can see where we're making good progress as an organization and where additional work is required, where perhaps risks have interrupted delivery? Um, do we have up-to-date status tracking and performance monitoring to ensure management have got a clear view of where they need to focus their time to encourage success and to manage risk? What the organizational structure looks like and the kind of hierarchy within an organization, the organization chart perhaps, how things like risk management, control is talked about, communicated across the organization. Is there a team responsible for risk management? Do they engage the business properly in this? Are there quarterly updates to the minister or a deputy minister? And how do the leadership of the organization get a clear view of what's happening? How do they get assurance over delivery, over the achievement of objectives, the management of risks, etc., etc.? and the different sources of assurance that there are. Us as internal audit in the third line, any kind of external audit that we might get either from a private sector firm or from supreme audit institutions in our countries, but also from some of the other functions that may provide assurance, risk management, health and safety, other teams, security, other teams that may have a role in that space. So that's section 9.1. It's about understanding uh, how governance works in our organisation, understanding how mature risk management is, and understanding how effective controls are for managing risk. You'll be familiar with some of the words on management and control. We'll need to have a good understanding of how the organisation does risk management and puts in place a framework for internal control. We've got our fabulous words about internal control here. I was talking about internal control with Pilar just last week. It's something that we often come back to. So it's about our management information. It's about efficiency of how we deliver our work. It's about how we protect our assets, financial assets, equipment, facilities, people at the end of the day, but also how we comply with laws, regulations, locally, nationally, and internationally, of course. So we're familiar with that. It's about understanding how that works in our organisations. Okay. Now, 9.2, internal audit strategy. This is where it starts to get a bit different, as I said. We've got to deliver, develop, and implement a strategy for the internal audit function. And this is where it gets a bit different, perhaps, that supports the strategic objectives and success of the organisation, and has to be socialized or communicated or meet the needs of our key stakeholders. And the emboldened words in the next paragraph, again, are perhaps a little bit where your strategy today may look different to what the Institute want to see in strategies in the future. Okay, a strategy, it's a plan of action. It's not just a list of audits, it's a plan of action that must include a vision. So what's our vision for internal audit in our organisation? Visions tend to be very future focused, quite intangible, very aspirational. So we could say things like we want to deliver excellent assurance and advisory services to help the organisation manage risk and deliver results to the population, or whatever our vision might be. So we're going to have to develop a vision. We're going to have to develop strategic objectives. Like all good objectives, these should be smart, specific, measurable, certainly something that we should achieve, not too easy, not too hard, relevant and realistic for us, and obviously have some time element to it, deadlines by the end of the year, by 2025, whatever those time elements may be. So proper strategic objectives and supporting initiatives, supporting activity for the internal audit function. So this goes beyond a list of audits that we're going to do in the next 3 years. It's more demanding than that. It's probably more useful and interesting than that as well. So I think this is a good thing. It helps, the strategy should help us deliver our mandate and deliver what we promised to deliver in the Charter. So it's our action plan, I suppose, for delivering the Charter over the next few years. And like any strategy, we should review it from time to time. Is it still valid? Is it still talking about the right things? Is it up to date? Do we need to add things in, take things out? And we've got to review that with the board and senior management. So with our key stakeholders, that could be the minister, it could be the audit committee, it could be the chief executive, okay, the key people that we work with in our organisations. Now, it goes on, of course, it doesn't just say that. In the considerations, which is this sort of strong guidance on how we should go about this, it gives us a little bit more information. So to develop the vision and strategic objectives, head of audit should, so we don't have to, but it's good advice here, should start by considering the organisation's strategy and objectives. So if we're working in a ministry or a municipality and it has a strategy that details what it's going to do and what it's going to be working on, what its priorities are for the next few years, then that should be our starting point. Because really, this is what we're going to be providing assurance and advice over. The objectives, the priorities, the resources, and how they're used to achieve the organization's strategy and objectives. So we've got to think about that, in my opinion. We certainly should. And we should also be talking with board and senior management to kind of understand what they want from us. Maybe we can educate them a little bit to show them what we can also do ourselves in these areas. They may have a view that is maybe a bit old-fashioned or a bit out of touch. We can take the opportunity to explore with them how we can do a little bit more than perhaps what they think. So there is something about understanding their expectations, but also helping their expectations change, as we spoke a little bit about last time, making them aware of what a modern, forward-looking, insightful internal audit function can do in the organisation. What else? The vision describes the desired future state, maybe a 3-year or 5-year view of what we want to be. Okay, not necessarily what we are today, but what we want to be in 3 years or 5 years time, whatever the duration of the strategy is. It gives us something to aim for, a goal or a target. And I shouldn't say goal, given the football. I know we'll have people from all over Europe and the football's on and all of that. So good luck to all of your teams going forward in the Euros, or many of your teams. Strategic objectives, as it says at the bottom, these define achievable targets that help us move closer to attaining, to realizing what our vision says. So if our vision talks about us being a professional, excellent internal audit service, I would expect to see some objectives that lead us in that direction. Okay, so what objectives could we have about being professional? Well, maybe there's some stuff there about certification, about doing CPD, about making sure we've got the right knowledge, skills, and experience to deliver an effective audit service across the main areas of risk in our organisation. If we've got something in there about efficiency, well, maybe there's something about how we use IT to make our job quicker, more timely, to deliver better results. Maybe there's something about streamlining our processes so audits don't take 3 months, they take 1 month, and that the reports that come out at the end are shorter, sharper, clearer, so that people can take action more instantly to our results. So there are objectives that we could set that support the achievement of whatever our vision says. And again, it's our opportunity to set some fairly demanding targets on ourselves, because we should be like every other function in an organization, have these demanding objectives and have to work hard to achieve those objectives. We don't want to be setting easy, simple things that we can do with our eyes closed. This is an opportunity to kind of show people what we're capable of. Okay, and it talks about supporting initiatives, and these may be the sort of bullet points that we'll need to do to achieve the strategic objective. So we might want to invest in training. We might want to register 5 team members on CIA qualification. We might want to ensure everybody does their CPD each year. These sorts of things that support the delivery of the associated strategic objective. What else does the strategy say? And you can see I'm spending a bit more time on this one because it is a kind of bigger challenge for us. We could start off by thinking and carrying out what I would call a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I've done this a number of times with my audit team. We've turned it into a sort of afternoon or a morning's team exercise where we get everybody together and we do a facilitated brainstorming exercise, thinking about our strengths. What are we currently good at as an internal audit team? What do we know we've got excellence or high capability in, our strengths? Second part, what do we know is a current problem? What are our current weaknesses? Okay, that's about both strengths and weaknesses are about today, very much so. Where do we know that we're not as good as we need to be? Then we can move into thinking, well, looking forward, looking into the crystal ball over the next year, the next 6 months, the next 3 years, whatever it might be. What are the opportunities that we suspect or expect could help us? And what are the threats, or if you like, the kind of negative risks that could impact us? So this might be something like, I don't know, a change of minister, perhaps. Perhaps that's an opportunity. Perhaps it's a threat, depending upon our circumstances. Right, so I've had a question from an anonymous attendee. Will we get the presentation? Yes, you will. Very much so. So we'll send it to the email that you've used to register for today. I believe that's how it's done. And you'll certainly get the presentation. But just to be clear, pretty much everything in this presentation is included in the standards already. So there won't be much more than's already available to you anyway. But yes, you'll get it. Second question, and hi, Belma. In the public sector in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have a strategic internal audit plan and an annual internal audit plan. Should we have a strategy in addition to them as a separate document, or is it enough to have a strategy instead of a strategic plan? A very good question. And the answer is, I'm afraid, it depends. It depends what's in your existing strategic internal audit plan. I'm guessing what you mean by that is it's probably a set of audits maybe that you're going to do over a 3-year period. I'm guessing that that's likely to be your strategic internal audit plan. And obviously your annual plan is what you're looking at in the current year. If what I've said is correct, then yes, you will need something in addition to that. Okay. Now, I don't like creating documents for the sake of creating documents. I like to keep things simple. It would make much more sense to me if you could add what we're talking about here, this stuff relating to these new standards, on top of the strategic internal audit plan you've got. So you've got one document that is both your strategy and your strategic plan, rather than having 3 documents covering the strategy, the strategic plan, and the annual plan. That's my view. Pilar.
Yeah, thanks. Now that we have some questions, I also wanted to express a thought and question what your opinion is, because it's, I mean, it's there's this change of nature. It's challenging for the internal audit, for the head of internal audit and the team. But then at the same time, this fact of aligning or taking into account the strategic objectives of the organization, etc., and really showing what internal audit wants to achieve in line with the expectations of the board, of the senior management. In some way, it can help to raise awareness, to help managers to understand the real function of the internal audit, to improve the organization. So, because sometimes there are problems in organizations where the management sees the internal auditor more as an enemy than
Yep.
an ally. So what do you think this can help really? Because the strategic plan will have all these things, all these showing what internal audit is going to do to help the organization.
I couldn't agree more, and you're absolutely right. I wouldn't be nervous about this. I would see this as a real opportunity to get out and show people and talk to people about what we really want to be doing. We want to be up here looking at the most important thing within the organization, the things that can help our organization be a real success. We don't want to be wasting our time with the low level, small little things that sometimes people expect us to be doing, or they want us to do that because they don't know we can be doing other more useful things. So it's absolutely an opportunity to get out and talk to people, to raise awareness, to show them what we're capable of, and then to deliver it. Okay, so I totally agree with you. Belma, thank you for your second point. You said in the second point, just for everyone else's benefit, we at CHU also believe that it is best to upgrade the strategic plan to requirements of the standard. Thank you. My pleasure, and I totally agree with that. We've got something in place currently. Let's improve it so that it looks much more like this going forward, because I think this is a better way of doing what we've been talking about. Thank you. Okay. What else? So there's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And obviously, where we have current weaknesses, where we expect to have threats, we can then translate those into objectives for improvement. This is what we're going to do to ensure that we manage these weaknesses and deal with these threats going forward over the next 2 or 3 years. So I think a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, is a really useful tool that we should do maybe once a year, once every couple of years, just to sort of see where we are. We can involve the team, we can make it a facilitated session, then use it to generate an action plan for improvement. Now, our organizations sometimes change their strategy. They change their strategic objectives. Often if there's a change of government or a change of minister or some new initiative is started, then our strategic priorities as an organization will change. The audit strategy will need to change to meet these new priorities and challenges. So just because we've developed an audit strategy for the next 3 years, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't go back to it and change it if the circumstances of our organization change dramatically. Yes, it would need to be communicated. Yes, we'd have to get it endorsed once again. But why would we continue with something that is not relevant, not useful, not looking at the right things? So it shouldn't just be fixed in stone. If there are major changes, material changes in our organization and its priorities, our strategy should change. It should be a living document. Final bit here, the head of audit may design a timeline for implementation of the strategy. So we might have some objectives for this year, some for next year, some for year 3 or year 4. and related performance measures too. And this is important because our objectives, as I said, should be smart, and we should be tracking progress on delivery. So how well are we doing at delivering these objectives? Have we delivered them? And so we'll need to measure and monitor and report on our progress. So quantifiable performance measures are important. We'll talk more about performance management later, because that's another area that has changed a little bit with these new standards. Okay, and we should talk with our key stakeholders about progress from time to time. So it's, yes, we have strategic plans now. We certainly have annual plans. I think our strategic plans look a little bit different to this. So we'll need to modernize, refresh, update our approach a little bit. And I would take this opportunity to think and develop something that is really useful for us as an audit service, but it's also useful for our organization and an opportunity to remind people of what we could and should be doing, even if we're not doing it today. So a great opportunity to sell internal audit and to raise awareness as we develop up a new strategy to meet what the standards here are requiring of us. Okay, methodologies. Um, this is a little bit more straightforward, I think, for us. We will have processes in our organization. We should have processes. We've probably documented these in some sort of audit manual, audit working practices. We will have set out the steps and stages in how we develop an annual plan, how we undertake our internal audits, and there'll be templates and documents that will form part of this. And really, this standard is saying that we've got to do this, you know, going forward with the new standards as well. It's really part of our existing standards. We will need to do this in our future standards too. I suppose the institute have made it a little bit more clear that we should review these from time to time and ensure that they're fit for purpose, and that, you know, where improvement is needed, we improve our working practices. That's very important as technology, for argument's sake, develops and continues to evolve. Are we getting the best from technology? Are we creating a process that is technology driven, not paper driven, for argument's sake? And the chief audit exec has got to ensure that the auditors follow the process and have the skills and the knowledge so that they understand the methodology that we follow. So there we go. Nothing really too different to what's expected at the present time. Just this extra sort of emphasis on continuous improvement. Internal audit plan. Okay, so this is again an interesting area, something that we all do, I'm sure. The requirement is fairly clear. The head of audit must create an internal audit plan that supports the achievement of the organisation's objectives. Okay, so clearly, whatever plan we're developing, it's got to be linked to the organisation's objectives. So can we do a match between audit and objective, audit and organizational objective? It's almost something like, you know, why are we doing this audit? Which objective for the organization does it align to? And if it isn't clear what objective we're looking at in a particular audit, why are we doing it? Would be a good question, a good test for ourselves, to be honest. You'll notice that it doesn't say anything about strategic plan or an annual plan there. The institute is much more flexible about this. An internal audit plan. And obviously, I know many of you will have a 3-year strategy and you'll have an annual plan. Maybe that's what local legislation requires, or your local CHU may want from you. But the standards don't ask for it. Okay. And what we have seen in recent years is many organisations sort of moving away from an annual plan into a more sort of flexible rolling plan. It might be 2 6-month plans, or it might be a plan quarter by quarter. Um, we can do different things as long as the law and the regulations in our country allow that. Uh, kind of main driver for more flexible planning is risks are changing much more quickly. The environment in which our organizations exist is changing quite quickly as well. If I develop a plan in say October and November to start in January, well, by August of the following year, or September or April, that plan may not be as relevant as it was in October or November. Things change, risks change, objectives change, ministers change. So, let's not be too rigid in our planning, because the environment in which we work can change. And there's little point looking at things that aren't important today, but were important 6 months ago. So I'll leave that with you. We can have an annual plan. That can work, particularly if things can be added in and things can be taken out. That can still work. I don't think any plan should be fixed in stone. It should have the opportunity to change as the environment changes. Now, there's a couple of things though that the head of audit must do. And this is perhaps also pretty relevant to us because I don't think everyone does this too well. The head of audit must base the internal audit plan on a documented assessment of strategies, objectives, and risks. Okay, now I've seen some very good internal audit plans where the risk scoring is there, the risk assessment is done, and that then leads to the audit engagements. But not everyone does that clearly. And how do we do it if we don't have risk management in our organization? Well, we're going to have to do our own kind of risk assessment of the organization. Maybe our own audit universe, maybe our own scoring of departments or processes or activities. But all the time, we should be encouraging our organizations to plan a little more strategically, to set clear, smart objectives, to identify risks, and to manage delivery. We should take the opportunity to nudge the organization forward in those areas every time we can. And it will make our planning simpler and easier if the organization is good at doing those things. If not, we'll have to do it ourselves. But it does say we've got to document that assessment, we've got to carry it out. Okay, and at the bottom you can see that we've got to do that at least annually. So it's compulsory, it's mandatory, some sort of documented assessment of strategies, objectives, and risks for the organisation to inform our audit plan. If someone like me came along to do an external assessment of you, I'd be looking to see how you've done that. Okay, can I trace it through documentation that shows me how the plan was created based upon this documented assessment linked to things that matter in the organization as key objectives? Okay. Now, the standard goes on and it talks about several other musts. When we're developing our plan, we must remember our mandate and what we've agreed to deliver to the organisation. So if we said in our mandate or charter that we'll do IT audits, performance audits, are we? Often people get a bit nervous about doing these sometimes. If we said we're going to do it, are we? It's a fair question. I'm not going to read it all out. The third bullet point is important. Um, the internal audit plan must consider coverage of IT governance. Okay, it's not an option, it must consider it. So how will we cover off the governance of technology and information systems in our organization? Excuse me, I'm just going to mute myself because I'm going to cough. Excuse me a second. Thank you. So, what work have we got looking at aspects of IT? Not just things like password management or use of emails, but IT governance, IT strategic planning, IT security at an organizational level. Important things given how much our organizations dependent on technology these days. We've got to think about fraud risk, as we probably always have done. What work we got in the plan that considers the risk of fraud. Goes on the effectiveness of the organisation's compliance and ethics programs. Well, I'm sure in many of our plans it'll be easy to spot the work that deals with compliance issues, but less easy to see the work that deals with ethics, culture, values, behaviors, conduct, and what the organization is doing to promote this ethical culture within an organization. So again, we don't have an option here. We've got to think about this and include work within the plan to cover this and other high risk areas. There we go. Okay, what else? We've got to the fourth bullet point. Identify the resources we need to deliver the plan. Okay, that's human resources, financial resources, technology resources. I'll talk more about that in a little while. The plan's got to be updated, it's got to be dynamic, it's got to change when the environment changes. And that's very important. Too often plans are viewed as fixed. We've written the plan, we've agreed the plan, we can't change it, we're going to carry on with it whether we want to or not. No, it's got to change as the environment changes. So, internal audit plan doesn't have to be annual, but I understand why it is often. Has to be based on a documented assessment of objectives, risks, etc. It's got to cover a number of important areas: IT, fraud, compliance, ethics, and other high-risk areas. It has got to be dynamic and changed as the environment changes. All of that is good practice. Um, Obviously, things may change from developing a plan to implementing the plan. If we have turnover within the audit team, it may make it hard to deliver the plan. If our IT auditor goes to work for the private sector and not with us anymore, it may be hard to deliver the IT parts of the plan. Things may change. But it is important to have an open and honest conversation with our stakeholders about this. So we might say we want to do some work in IT space, but we don't have the skills to do it. So during the year, we will put our people on IT audit training to acquire those skills. So it should it should be open and honest about why we're unable to look at some high risk areas and what we're going to do about it. The second bullet point here is quite an interesting one. When it comes to our plans, we must, it says the word must there, we must say why we're not going to look at some high risk areas. So if cybersecurity was a really high risk area for our ministry, but we're not going to look at it in this plan, we've got to say why. So it might be that we say, well, we looked at it last year, and management are still implementing the actions from our last review. So there's no point us coming along and doing another audit this year. it might be that we say we're not going to do the audit of cybersecurity because we don't have the skills. Okay, well, that's honest, but what are we going to do to get the skills? Because cybersecurity is probably a number one or number top three risk for any organization. So simply saying, or simply leaving it off the plan and hoping nobody notices that we're not auditing it is not a good idea. The rationale why we're not doing work in certain high risk areas, it can be a useful conversation to have because it might identify that there's lots of high risk areas, but we can only do a small amount of them each year. Maybe we need more resources as an audit service. It can be an input to those conversations about resourcing. So I would see this again as an opportunity to show people what we're going to do, to explain why we're not going to do some things, and to get them to support us in, you know, obtaining what we need to be able to give them more assurance over the high risk parts of their organization. But to do that, we need to be open, honest, and transparent. We can't just sort of leave subjects off the plan and not expect to be asked about that. And we need to explain why we've done that. Okay, and that's probably a little bit more transparent than many of us are today. So something to bear in mind. Looking at time, I'm going to move on. Okay. We spoke about coordination and reliance sort of a few weeks ago, just a little bit. And again, this is about working with other providers of assurance in the organization. It may be the risk team, it might be security, it might be inspection, it might be health and safety, it might be, I don't know, IT security, business continuity, these sorts of people. It might also be working with our external audit colleagues from supreme audit institutions. But it's pretty clear that the head of audit must coordinate with these other providers of assurance and consider relying upon their work. Okay. Many of you will know my views about relying on people's work. I don't think we do it enough. I think we should rely on the team's work where we can. But to understand whether I can rely on them or not, if they're an internal assurance provider, I would want to audit them first. I take a look at how they work, what they do, how they conduct themselves. Are they professional? Are they effective? And depending upon the results of that audit, if I find that they're really good, really professional, they do things properly, they have certifications and qualifications, if they're objective in how they carry out their work, then why wouldn't I work with them and ensure my work supports them, their work supports me, and I could stop doing some work if they were doing it properly and well. I know that many people get a bit nervous about that, and I understand that. But if we audit an area, surely we should make some recommendations for improvement. And if they implement those recommendations for improvement, surely they should then be good and effective and proper because they've done what we told them that they need to do. If we check that they're then doing it properly, we should be relying on them, in my opinion. At the very least, we should be coordinating our work with them. Make sure that we're not all looking at the same things, leaving big risks elsewhere across the organization uncovered. So it's about efficiency here. It's about making sure we're all adding work to, um, work in the right areas to ensure proper coverage across the organization, to ensure that our stakeholders are getting the right sort of um, views of risk and control from uh, other good sources of intelligence and information. Now, how does coordination work? Well, the Institute gives us some examples here. Obviously, talking about planning, making sure that we're not reviewing the same area at the same time. We don't want to go and look at finance when the Supreme Audit Institute is coming in and doing their work. It's not fair on the finance team, and it's a waste of everybody's time, really. Coordination can involve looking at how our procedures differ. Maybe introducing a common language for findings or risks, perhaps. Obviously, sharing information about risks and control, of course. Might be working together in a joint team to deliver a joint piece of work. So there are things that we can do. Maybe the idea of some sort of assurance map is a useful thing to consider. If we've got sort of 5 key strategic objectives for our organisation and some key risks to those objectives, we could begin to work to understand which teams within the organisation are providing assurance over the management of those risks. First line assurance from management, second line assurance from risk, compliance, health and safety, cyber security, and third line assurance from us at internal audit, maybe external assurance from our external audit colleagues. Can begin to map out those assurances and see where the gaps are. Maybe we, as internal audit, should be doing more work where there are gaps because nobody else is providing useful assurance. If there is too much assurance on certain subjects, well, why are we looking at it so regularly? If the assurances are good and reliable, maybe we could take a step back and leave that work to other people and focus more of our time on the high risk areas that aren't being properly covered. Something to think about. Okay. Oh, I think I've got a question. Right, anonymous. Should internal audit own the assurance map, or should it be something that the organisation owns? It's a very fair question, and again, there's not a single answer. Developing an assurance map is not our core business. Our core business is delivering assurance work and advisory work to improve governance, risk, and control. Ideally, the assurance map should be owned by the business. And I would typically say whoever provides the secretarial, the governance support to the board or to the leadership team, they ought to maintain the assurance map. The reality often is that nobody else has the skills or the desire to have an assurance map. And so it may fall to us to do it because nobody else wants to do it or nobody else can do it. The second reason why it may come to us is we can use it for other things. We can use it as an input, that documented assessment of objectives and risks that we were talking about earlier. If an assurance map helps us identify where the gaps are and where we could be doing work to add value, then it has some use for us. So again, audit teams often get involved in this because if it's going to happen, we might as well make sure it's done properly and we can use it ourselves as an input to our audit strategy and audit plans. So ideally not us, but I can see why often it is us. If we do get involved in it, we need to allocate time to it. It's not something that is always quick and easy. We do have to think about it sensibly. Are we going to map assurances over every risk or just the top 10 or the top 5 or the top 12 risks? And we, obviously need to ensure it stays up to date and current. So it does depend. Ideally not us, but in practice, often us. There we go. There's my answer to that one. Okay, moving on. Principle 10 is about managing resources. Okay, and it's fairly clear here. We had a resource management standard 2030 under our previous IPPF. We've got a principle here about resources. The head of audit manages resources to implement the strategy, achieve its plan, and achieve its mandate. So that's the goal for us, the target. Now, unlike our previous standard, the Institute now have broken down resources into three areas: financial resources, human resources, and technological resources. Again, given the importance of technology. Look at the words in that final sentence. The chief audit exec needs to obtain the resources required to perform internal audit responsibilities and deploy these resources properly. Okay, so we've got to get the resources that we need to do our job. And again, that may involve some difficult conversations about resourcing of internal audit. The first standard talks about the financial resources. And again, I appreciate how we do budgets and how these financial resources are set for internal audit teams will vary across countries and across organizations, of course. And I know sometimes financial resources managed centrally, not on a decentralized basis. What it's saying here in the standard is the head of audit must manage the internal audit function's financial resources. They've got to work out how much of a budget we need to deliver what we've promised to deliver. So there should be this link between objectives, between the mandate, our job, and the financial resources we need to deliver what we've promised. Otherwise, it's not a resource strategy, it's a wish list. We're going to do all of these things, but we haven't got any money, so we can't do it. So we're going to fail. So it needs to be a properly funded strategy. The budget includes the resources necessary for our operations, so payroll, for the positions that we have in the internal audit service, but also for training, for technology, for travel, for subsistence, for the tools that we need to do our job. Might be laptops, might be audit software, these things. So again, I appreciate it's done differently in different organizations, but there has to be a link between what we're promising to be doing and the financial resources we need to deliver it. Otherwise, we're not going to achieve our strategy. Second element to it is around the people resources. And the requirement is pretty clear. We've got to establish an approach to recruit, develop, and keep internal auditors who are qualified to deliver our plan, to deliver the work, to deliver what we promised to do, and to achieve the results that we've set out to achieve. We need to manage the people to help us deliver that. We've got some words below in bold. We've got to have appropriate resources, sufficient resources. Appropriate is about knowledge, skills, experience. Sufficient is about the number. So again, we do need to think carefully about the resourcing of the audit service. If we need more human resources, then we should be making the case for those resources. Show them why it's essential that we need another auditor, or another 2 or 3 or 5 auditors. Link it to risk, link it to the strategy, link it to the assurance map, and we begin to then generate the evidence that we need to support the case for additional resources. They see that we're doing good work and we're limited in staff numbers. We need to think about the best way of making the case for that. And the standards require us to do this. The chief audit executive must communicate with the board and senior management regarding the appropriateness, the skills and expertise, and the number of the internal audit function's human resources. If we can't deliver the plan because we don't have the right number of good people, then we've got to talk this through with our leadership team. We can't hide it, disguise it. We can't just say everything's okay when it isn't. We've got to make it clear, because we don't have this, I can't deliver this. And they may accept that, of course. There are never enough resources for everything, but we need to make it transparent and clear to them, the implications of any resourcing decisions. Because you're not giving me these 2 extra auditors, I can't provide you the assurance you need over these areas of risk. We need to make that transparent. Okay. Now, there's things that we can do to understand whether we've got the right number of good auditors. We need to think a little bit about the competencies that we need and the competencies we have. We could use the IA competency framework for that and do a sort of assessment of our team. We can think a little bit about the work that we need to do, how complex our organisation is, how complex the audit work is that we want to deliver. We can think a little bit about how many hours or days audit work can we deliver each year as an audit service. We can add up the numbers and think a little bit about what that means. There are things that we can do to try to understand whether we have sufficient resources and sufficient appropriate resources. And the standards are requiring us to do this. So it's not, again, just good practice, it's mandatory practice. The final area in this section is around technology. And again, this is to encourage us to become a little bit more technology friendly, I think, as auditors. You can see the words here. Have we got the right technology to support us and our work? Or are we, too manual? Are we still relying on samples of 15 when there are a million transactions that we could look at? The head of audit must regularly evaluate the technology used by us and try to improve what we have. And that could be data analytical tools, computer assisted audit tools, audit management software, things like Power BI, dashboards and interfaces, whatever, our use of AI, whatever it might be. Are we making good use of technology to support us in the work that we're doing? Are we pushing the boundaries? Are we, really putting the effort into continuously improving our use of technology? There's stuff that we can do with SharePoint, standard sort of Microsoft tools now, as long as we've got the skills to do so. We don't always need expensive analytical tools if we've got a really good knowledge of Excel. But have we? So it doesn't always have to have cost implications for the organization. But, I don't think every audit function makes the best use of technology that it should. If we don't have the technology that we need, then we need to explain what the consequences of this are to our stakeholders. You can see that in bold there. So, existing technology, are we using it? Are we using it efficiently? Is it helping us deliver our audit work in the best possible way? If not, we need to improve. And is there new technology out there that we should consider, adopt, even make a business case for acquiring if it would help us deliver our job better, quicker, faster, more completely? Why not? Why wouldn't we? And again, the Institute gives some guidance on this. There's things that we should be doing to understand what technology is available, how we can use technology, etc., etc. We can read that one after today. Okay, the 11th area, and we've just got this and the one on quality to cover. So I'm going to talk for 10 more minutes, ideally, and we'll move to any final questions. Remember, if there are questions as we're going along, please pop them in the chat. Okay, so we've got to communicate effectively with our key stakeholders, whether they want us to or not. That's what we've got to do. And this is important for a number of reasons. It's important for the reasons that Pilar mentioned earlier, talking to our stakeholders about our plans, our objectives, our priorities. It's also important for talking to them about the resources that we've just been touching upon. An internal audit service is not the police of the organisation. It's not the inspection team anymore. It's a good, positive, value-adding improvement tool. And communication can help us shape people's understanding of internal audit. It can help us establish trust with the people that we're reviewing and auditing, as well as senior management. And it can help ensure they get the best from an audit service because they actually understand more what it is that we're doing, why we do it, and how we do it. And all of that is really, really important. I can audit anything. If you don't want me to audit you, I can still audit you. It's not going to be fun for me. It's not going to be fun for you, and it's not going to add much value. But if you are more open with me, if we have a good working relationship, then the audit that I do of you, if you're engaged, if you're communicating with me, if I'm communicating with you, the audit that I do has the opportunity to add some real value because nothing is hidden, nothing is concealed. We're sharing, we're talking. There is an effective relationship that allows me to add real value in the organization and not just tick boxes. Okay, the head of audit is responsible for helping us establish ongoing communication with stakeholders to build trust. Trust is so important, and to improve or develop relationships. That's what it's saying. So in many ways, the head of audit's job is a communication role. Every auditor's job really is about communication, and every meeting with every individual on an audit is an opportunity to market internal audit properly and professionally. So we've got to develop an approach for us to build relationships and develop trust with our key stakeholders. Okay, it's not optional. The standards are mandating this. And it's not just the minister or a senior manager. It also says there operational management and other internal and external assurance providers. So, you know, we've all encountered managers we don't really like within our organizations. Well, sadly for us, we've got to try to engage with them and deal with this professionally, of course. Okay, and this will help us deliver a better service. Now, as well as the operational managers, of course, we have to be engaging with our audit committees if we have them, with ministers and other senior management. So that we can stay up to date with what's happening in the organization, so that we can communicate with them about risk and control and governance, so we can talk about the work that we've done and the work that we have coming up, of course. There are things that we could do in terms of attending meetings, participating in key fora and forums in an organization. Says here the head of audit also should attend meetings with the board and key governance committees. And again, not everyone does this so much. We can't spend all of our time in meetings, but they can be very useful for us to understand what's really going on in the organisation and what our key stakeholders are worried about, thinking about and doing, because we can then develop up a better audit plan and better audit service to help them. We've got to communicate effectively. And these are the same words that are used in our current standards. Accurate, objective, clear, concise, constructive communications, etc. And that covers all forms of communication: verbal, emails, instant messaging, and of course our audit reports and the reporting that we do to the minister or to our audit committees. And it's not always easy to develop things that are complete but concise or clear. And certainly, like every profession, we use a lot of jargon in audit, words that nobody else uses really. Assurance, risk appetite, There are words that we often use, reasonable assurance. There are words that mean things to us that a lot of people don't use in everyday language. So we do have to be conscious of that too. Effective communications. We know about communicating results because we've got a very similar standard in the current IPPF. We've got to communicate the results of our audit work periodically and at an engagement level. So we might have quarterly or 6 monthly or annual reporting to the minister, and obviously we communicate results at an engagement level. But again, it doesn't say it needs to be a 50-page audit report in black and white with no life or energy within it. It doesn't say that at all. It's not prescriptive on format of our audit reporting. As I said a few months ago, many audit teams are moving to much shorter, much clearer, much more colourful, sometimes interactive audit reports. And it doesn't have to be a traditional 50-page audit report anymore. Nobody's reading them, then what's the point of producing them? So think a little bit about your reporting. Okay, themes. Yeah, this is interesting. I like this thing about themes, where we identify common problems or themes that link to some part of governance, risk, or control. Then we maybe need to identify that this is a common issue, a common theme, and think a little bit about what needs to be done. So if we keep finding that people are making the same mistakes about the same things in different bits of the business, it's no point just saying people are making mistakes, people are making mistakes. We need to think a little bit more about why they're making mistakes and what needs to be done to ensure those mistakes are reduced or eliminated. Is it because the policy is unclear? Well, update the policy. Is it because they haven't been trained properly in how to do their work? Well, get them some proper training, and then we'll see less mistakes. So let's think a little bit about common problems or common root causes that we see in our work, and not simply say the same things time after time after time, but try to think a little bit about what can be done to fix those problems. Okay, something that's also interesting. I like that one. Errors and omissions, I'm not going to talk about that. If we make a bad mistake, we find out too late, we don't just hide it, we fix it. We tell people, sorry, we've made a mistake. That's what that one is. Okay. One last one in this section, then a couple on quality. Sometimes we make recommendations and management don't want to implement them, or they decide to accept the risk of not doing what we're saying. Now, I don't like that situation because, we've identified a problem, something needs to be done. It might be that they come up with a better answer. Okay, if it's a better answer, I'm happy with that. We'll change the recommendation, or we'll accept what they're going to do. If it's better, brilliant. I'm very happy about that. But sometimes they'll reject what we want them to do. If that happens, I'm going to sit round the table with them and try to get agreement, because I think it's a problem. They don't. We need to fix this. And there'll be dialogue, there'll be communication. Sometimes I might want to talk to their manager or their manager's manager to try to resolve this. If we can't get to a happy place where we're all agreed, then in that sort of situation, I would want to escalate that up to the minister or whoever's in charge ultimately, and bring it to their awareness. And maybe the minister will decide what happens, but I will have done my bit. I will have highlighted a risk. I'll have shown why it's a risk, and ultimately they may choose to accept that risk. They can. It's their prerogative. But only once I've got to the point, I can demonstrate that I've done my bit. It's not my job to resolve the risk. It's their job. I can't do anything else. Ultimately, it's their decision, and they have that right. but I'll try and influence, I'll try and communicate, I'll try and explain why I'm concerned about this and try and get them to do something sensible to deal with the risk. Last one's around quality. We spoke a bit about quality last time, the external quality assessments. This one is about our responsibility to ensure that we're doing our work properly in line with the Global Internal Audit Standards. The head of audit is responsible for our conformance with these standards and for continuous improvement, as it says there. So we've got something similar to what we have in our existing standards, the 1300 standards about quality assurance and improvement. Here we've got the internal quality assessment stuff. We spoke about external quality assessment previously. And here we've got the monitoring of our work at an engagement level, the supervision, the management checks, the sign off of working papers and of the reports and all of that. We've also got the same requirement we have currently for a periodic self-assessment against the standards that needs to be done properly, professionally, objectively. It shouldn't be just a tick, 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 tick in 5 minutes. It should lead to improvement actions that perhaps we incorporate in our quality assurance and improvement plan, or we incorporate in our audit strategy. We should have this desire and this culture for continuous improvement in audit, not just thinking that we're as good as we need to be. And the third bit is about communicating with our key stakeholders about the results of these internal assessments. So something that we might want to section in our annual report on quality assurance and improvement program. This year we have supervised our work and identified a couple of training needs for some of our team. We're implementing that. We've conducted a self-assessment against the standards and generally conform, but we noticed that we have to make improvements in these 3 areas. So that should be included in our annual reporting, or our 6 monthly reporting to our key stakeholders. And if there are things that need to be improved, then we've got to develop action plans with owners, with deadlines. We need to track those actions, just like we would expect any part of the organisation to do. This is a new entry. Many of us do it already, but now we have to do it. We've got to implement some performance measures, basically, to track our progress against our objectives. This could be KPIs, it could be targets, it could be metrics. It needs to be a range of sensible performance measures. Again, we need to report it to our stakeholders, and we might want to involve our stakeholders in deciding what these measures are or what they should be. Traditional measures are around delivering the plan, around the implementation of recommendations, around issuing a number of reports, but there are other measures that we can use around customer satisfaction, about percentage of high risk covered in a given year, about the use of technology and data analytics in our work, around the competence and certifications of our team. So there's plenty of different measures that we can talk about. Maybe we'll do a workshop on something like that in the future. It's an interesting subject. But we now have to properly measure our performance and report on it. And to my mind, it shouldn't just be some of the traditional measures that we use. It should be measures much more focused on the quality of the service, the quality of the assurance, the improvements seen in the organisation, output and outcome measures, not just input measures. But enough on that. We'll pick up that another time, I think. Okay. What else? Supervision, yes. So making sure that the engagement work, assurance work, and advisory work is done to the right standard. So it's about managing the audit process. Whoever's leading the audit, the role, responsibility of the engagement lead, the audit manager, the auditor, the head of audit in that process. Obviously, The level of supervision should depend upon the competence and experience of the people we're supervising. More supervision for those who are less experienced, and less supervision for the more experienced team members. That's it for today. So, my friends, a gallop through domain 4. There's some interesting stuff there. Strategy, planning, coordination, reliance, resourcing, quality assurance. There's a lot for us to think about there, and it's not all just the same as what we're doing today. Any questions?
If there are no questions, I have one, but maybe then people will also feel more willing to ask the questions. So when we were talking at the beginning about strategic planning, the strategy of the internal audit, the first step is to get to know really in depth the governance, risk management, internal control of the organization. And even in some way, you mentioned at some point that there has to be an assessment of those, because that will give us an idea of the weaknesses, risky areas, etc., for us to prepare, for the internal head of internal audit to prepare the strategy with the team. So my question comes more after all this, and this is something that we were discussing by mail some days ago, because the internal audit does not have to give an opinion of that, but in some way has to assess. So it's and probably has to communicate as part of that communication, and open and transparent to senior management what the risks are, what is not working well, what they should reinforce in their governance system, etc. So that's my question again.
No, it's a very fair question, Pilar. There's really two elements to this. We have to understand the effectiveness of governance, risk management, and control in order to deliver the best audit service for the organization at that point in time. We develop that understanding by a whole range of different activity. It will be built up over time from our existing knowledge and meetings that we've attended, existing audit work and all of that. But if you're new to an organization, you start with a blank sheet of paper, don't you? So you then have to go out and talk to people to begin to build this picture of the organization. You need to review documents. Where's the risk management process or policy? How do we do strategic planning as an organization? What committees do we have? What steering groups are set up? Who decides on what? So you build this understanding, and ultimately you're going to form a view of how good governance, risk and control are. You could do that in a formal way, do some sort of maturity assessment. You could even do some audit work, an audit of governance, an audit of risk management, a number of audits that look at some of the components of internal control. And that will give you a kind of baseline. We then go away, do our audit work, looking at whatever the priorities are, and then we write our reports. And at the end of the year, many of us will write an annual report. Not everyone, but many of us will. And within that annual report, I think good practice is to provide an overall view of governance, risk management and control within that report. So yes, we've got the audits, yes, we've got the number of recommendations, but there should be some insight, some evaluation from me as the head of audit that says what's working. We've looked at these things are working well, but also covers off the priorities for improvement. Risk management is not properly embedded in our organization. There's more that needs to be done here. That will then feed into the thinking and perhaps the decision making that our senior stakeholders do. Some of that work will, some of those conclusions will come from our audit work. Some of it will come from my judgment, my experience, and from being in the organization, talking to people, attending meetings, doing advisory work as well. So there should be this linkage from the kind of assessment to the strategy, to the plans, to the work, to the conclusions at engagement level and in an annual report. And golden thread of risk through all of that, perhaps. Oh, I can see we've got some questions now. There we go. You got the ball rolling. So, Yusuf, thank you very much. Which standards have known the most significant changes in the latest version of the GIAS? And what do you expect the implications on the quality of internal controls, say, in the public sector to be? Thank you. Good question, Yusuf. And I hope you had a good Eid yesterday, by the way. So I hope you had a good time. Yusuf, there are some new standards, and so obviously, those are going to be the ones that have changed the most. From today, the one around the audit strategy is probably the biggest change, because it's pretty clear, and there is more in the actual standards itself that you should read. It's pretty clear that an audit strategy now is something a bit bigger, a bit more useful, a bit more interesting than many of the audit strategies we have currently. So that's one of the biggest changes. I think the biggest change overall, I love the standard that talks about proficiency, and I think it's proficiency and courage. Maybe not proficiency, something and courage. Courage. We've got to be brave as internal auditors in doing our work objectively and reporting what we find. Things are not working, we've got to say it, even if that's a difficult conversation with senior people who can be a bit grumpy or upset with us. No, to add value, we do have to be brave and have courage. There are other standards, the one on technological resources is an interesting one, trying to show that we need to think about technology and how we get the best effect from technology. With a strong encouragement in one of the standards that we'll look at next time around root cause analysis and working with management to understand the root causes of some of the problems that we find. There's plenty of changes. I think, as we said in our first webinar, the kind of bar is higher now than it was before. And I think we'll probably look to share or make available to you the recordings from each of the webinars. So if you didn't attend the first one where I gave a kind of good summary, I think, of the main changes, then we'll probably be able to share those or put them up somewhere so that you can look at those in the future. So I hope that begins to answer that question. I've got a question there from Ole. Hi there to you, Ole. How can we ensure the independence of an audit while demonstrating coordination with the enterprises they're auditing? A thin line between coordination and misconduct. I like that. Now, objectivity and independence doesn't mean we can't say hello to people and we can't work closely with them. We're dependent upon them anyway in giving us stuff and supplying us with their time and their information. Okay. If I want to get some time with someone or to get them to do something, being nice to them, being pleasant, being professional is a means to help me get what I want. It doesn't mean that I've lost my objectivity or I'm best friends with them and we go out to a cafe for tea after work or whatever it happens to be. So you're right. We do have to guard against, the appearance of conflicts or loss of objectivity. But being professional, approaching things in the right way is going to help improve the quality of the results and the quality of the work. Coordinating our work with other people makes sense for everybody where it's right to do so. It's more efficient for us, means we can spend our time looking at areas of risk that other people aren't looking at. It gives then more assurance to our stakeholders And it's better for the poor managers who might get a visit from audit one day, a visit from external audit the next day, a visit from the security team on day 3. When are they going to have time to do their day job if they're constantly being reviewed by teams that aren't talking to each other? It's not efficient. So there we go. Being polite, being appropriate, being respectful, building effective professional relationships does not mean compromising objectivity or independence. It's a means to get what we want more effectively and deliver a better service, in my view. Thank you. That's a great question. Anything else, my friends?
Okay, so if it's not the case, if there are no other questions, just a very short closure, as John has to catch a train, and
I'm off
yeah.
to London now. Yeah.
Yes. So very briefly, thank you very much, John, for leading us through this, as you said, very passionate and interesting domain, because now we have moved to the internal audit work itself, to what internal audit has to do, and so how to plan strategically, and also do the annual or the shorter term plans, managing resources, including financial, human, and technological, which is very important, how to communicate effectively, results, how to, in some way, build trust and get establish ongoing communication, and how to enhance quality. All these are responsibilities of the head of internal audit. And then, as you mentioned, yeah, some challenges there with the strategic planning, which is now a bit different, with transforming the annual audit plan into something that is not just a list of audits, but really actions to contribute to the objectives of the organization, how to build this trust with managers without, related to this last question, without harming independence of internal audit. So very challenging things in this domain, but at the same time, I would like just to conclude with the positive opinion that you expressed, because it's also an opportunity. It's a challenge, of course. It's going to be a bit difficult to change the way internal audit is doing its work, but then it's an opportunity to talk to senior management, to show how internal audit is going to contribute to the objectives of the organization, how can internal audit better serve the organization, how to present where internal audit will need resources and why those are needed. So a very good opportunity also to have a better exchange, to be more transparent and better achieve the objectives of the internal audit. So let's conclude with this positive idea. Now, thanks to all of you for participating today. Thanks to John, as usual, for the very enlightening and very useful and feedback he's giving us for the internal audit work. And also thanks to Ilana for organizing everything. And from me, only to mention about the next webinar, which will be on 18th September at 2 o'clock, and it will be about the last domain of the Global Internal Audit Standards, performing the internal audit function. And we will be sending probably after the summer or at the end of August the link for you to register and be able to join later. That's all from me. Thank you very much again to everybody, and have a nice rest of the day.